You can find them on Twitter, you can find them on the gram. After listening to their podcast, you'll be sitting there like, damn, taking their teaching from one level to the next, reaching up to Canada and down
maybe
to
even just like
Mexico.
what design thinking is for you, and some of the projects that you've run, and then you showed us, or you had talked to us about the EduPermaculture, and we really are interested in hearing a whole lot more about that.
Yeah, so design thinking is a creative problem-solving toolkit. And what really blew me away when I first heard about it, and with my shallow understanding of it, was that it's something that you actually equip the students with. So I was a bit confused when I went to conferences, and there would be a session about project-based learning. There would be a session about maker spaces. But it was all teacher facing, in a sense that it's those things that I just talked about are really tools for teachers. It's like an approach that teachers use to design these authentic learning experiences. And project-based learning talks about inquiry, that kind of thing. But there was never a toolkit for students to use to be creative and then actually create things and try to think of innovative solutions. There wasn't something like that. And so I just felt like project-based learning and design thinking was such a great match. Right. Because it's, again, the teacher approach, and then the teacher tool, and then you have the student tool to navigate through that project-based learning type of scenario. And I was really excited to hear all of these mindsets that I just felt like I was never taught in my schooling, and never discussed. And for me, I really connected to it because I felt like the little success I had during that, up to that point, was because of those mindsets that I quickly realized I needed and developed. And that was all outside of education. So, yeah, I felt like I was on a mission where I was kind of upset. Like, why was I learning all of these cool things outside of education? Why was I learning how to become, because as a computer teacher, like I hated computers when I was given that job, and I had to learn how to become a computer teacher, and I had to learn how to collaborate with teachers and help them integrate. I was learning all these things. How come that learning was so different than the learning we did at school? So I had this kind of chip on my shoulder, like, well, why did I kind of, because the education I got was great. Like,
was it public school?
It was public school. I mean, it was great in a sense that the reputation was really good, but I don't think any of that stuff that I learned really helped me in the real world. So that's where EduPermaculture kind of came in. I was just thinking, like, okay, so if we're trying to prepare our students for literally anything, like their future, any challenge that they're given, we need to make sure we design a learning experience that replicates that. And that's why I was so drawn to project-based learning, is because teachers are trying to replicate real world work, right? And design that context. And then design thinking was this tool that professionals were using across a lot of different fields, and they were being successful. Like, they were thinking outside the box, and they're not only being creative, but their solutions are actually innovative and making things better, which I found really fascinating. And so my whole approach to education was to make it as real as possible, but also find the tools that professionals are using, successful professionals, and then giving it to the students. That's what I was constantly doing. And so at the Google Innovator Academy that I got to go to, I was talking to someone about this who is now kind of the co-founder of EduPermaculture. And I was explaining all of this, and he's like, oh, this sounds like permaculture. And he basically said that these two guys, Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, they were really fascinated about ecosystems and why farms and design landscapes that we design produce some biomass, but not as much as like a true ecosystem. And why is that ecosystem sustainable, right? And so what they did was they basically took the principles, the patterns that they found in ecosystems, and then used it in their designed landscapes. And that, to me, it was like, whoa, that's what I've been trying to do all my life, is to take what the real world ecosystem and take the great effective strategies and practices, mindsets, culture, and place it into my classroom. And so that's where EduPermaculture came, where you're constantly trying to simulate the real world in that way, and then taking those best practices and giving it to the students. So
thanks for listening to the Teacher Nerds podcast. Keep up with every new episode by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, or anywhere you listen. Remember to visit teachernerds.com, and that's nerds with a Z. Follow us on Twitter @TeacherNerds and on Instagram @TeacherNerdsPodcast. And thank you for being one of the Teacher Nerds.